Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's No Filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, do all top-level bodybuilders use steroids or are any of them natural? If I were to place a bet on this, I would say that 90% of professional bodybuilders, professional bikini competitors, men's physique competitors use anabolic steroids to some degree. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that every single one of them that made it into the IFBB, that got their IFBB Pro card, were using steroids to get that card, because there's a lot of people that are training as natural lifters and they do really well at an amateur show, then they move on to a provincial level show, and then they win a national level show. But once they get into that IFBB Pro ranking, it becomes very competitive and very, very difficult because now you're training or competing, I should say, with the best in the world. No longer the best in just your province or the best in your country or the best in your state. You're competing with the best of the best in the world. So, in order to be able to remain competitive, you have to kind of go up to that next level, which for most people would be an anabolic steroid cycle. Okay. And I'm talking about for men and for women here. Okay. So I think it would be naive to say that anyone who competes in the IFBB Pro rankings doesn't use steroids, because I would imagine that most, if not all, do to some degree. I mean, some use it more than others. But you have to remember, drugs doesn't make a winner. Okay. There's more to it, because if you look at, let's say, the Mr. Olympia, for example, and you get 15 to 20 guys competing at the Mr. Olympia, which is a pro qualifier show, you have to qualify to be able to compete at that show, which means you've had to win a show to be able to compete at that show. Okay. So we're looking at really the best of the best. Why is number 15 not as good as number one? Is it because they don't train as hard? Probably not. Is it because the drug cycle is much different? Probably not. In fact, most guys who are in the lower part of the rankings usually use more drugs than the guys who are at the higher part of the rankings. So your top five are usually using less drugs than the guys who are in the bottom five. Why? Genetics. Okay. The genetic elite, the elite of the elite. We're talking about the Ronnie Colemans, the Phil Heaths, the Jay Cutlers. Okay. Those are the guys who are making the top five for a reason. It's not the drugs, it's the genetics. Okay, they're genetic freaks. So when you combine genetics with anabolic steroid cycle, and then on top of that, a great work ethic, you're gonna stack all of those three assets into one, and then you've got a champion. Okay. So that's why the top five in any really class usually remains that top five for a few years, right? You don't really see them shuffling around too much. It's because of the combination of the drugs, the genetics, training hard, obviously, making sure the diet's dialed in. That's important as well. But really, it's the genetics that make that deciding factor between first place and last place. Okay. Of course, there's people who are not genetically gifted who make it into that top five. There are people who work really hard, train really hard, diet really hard. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you have two people who are training with the same level of intensity and they're using the exact same nutritional plan and they're following the exact same supplement protocol, the person with the superior genetics is always going to beat the person with the genetics that are average at best. Okay. And that's a fact. And unfortunately, that's a fact that a lot of people don't want to accept. But listen, I've been following bodybuilding for over 20 years, and it is what it is. If you don't have tough skin, don't compete in bodybuilding, because you're being judged purely on how you look. The judges do not care how much weight you lift. The judges do not care how much you had to sacrifice to get ready for your show. The judges do not care how hard you had to diet, how much cardio you had to do. All that is irrelevant. It means jack shit. It's how you look. You are being judged purely on the aesthetics component. Okay. And a lot of people don't want to face that. And and if you don't want to face that, don't compete in a sport where you're being judged purely on how you look. Because at the end of the day, it's like a beauty pageant. And that goes for any class, whether you're competing in bikini, men's physique, classic physique, bodybuilding, whatever you're competing in, you're being judged on your looks. So that's the sport. And so there are guys that and women who will use anabolic steroids and able to make their muscles bigger, make their muscles harder, make their body fat lower. Okay. It's not cheating because it's accepted, right? If you're training in a natural federation, well, then yeah, it's cheating because you're not supposed to be using steroids. And that's why there's drug testing involved. Okay. So I only get aggravated when I know of professional bodybuilders out there who lie about their anabolic steroids use. And I'm like, why lie? Just be transparent. You're not going to go to jail. You don't have to go into detail as to what you're doing. You just, if someone asks you, you can say, no, I'm not natural. That's it. Okay. But at the end of the day, I think it's negligent when people are telling people, yeah, I did this by just eating clean and just by doing my cardio and training hard, because that's not true. Okay, there's one more component to add into that, and it's the anabolic steroids. Okay, so yes, to answer that question, I would say at least 90% of the people that compete in the IFBB are using steroids. There might be the odd few that are not, but I would be surprised if any of those few are even making top five at any of the shows. Okay, but like I said, there are a few people out there. Actually, there's probably quite a few people out there who get their pro cards training as natural, because these days they give out pro cards like candy. It's not that difficult to get one. You stick around long enough in the league, competing in amateur shows, provincial level shows, national level shows, you're eventually going to get a pro card. Especially if you are training hard, right? And you are dieting hard and you're supplementing properly, you can achieve that pro card. But once you get to that next level of the IFBB pro status, staying competitive at those level shows are very difficult to do because, as I said, you're competing with the best in the world. So, yeah, I would imagine that most, if not all, people who compete in the IFBB are on some type of anabolic steroid cycle. All right. Nick, is it possible to get to build muscle without lifting weights? There'll be people out there who say there is. It's definitely possible, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, if you're swimming every day, you're definitely going to build up some muscle in your shoulders and your legs for sure. I mean, if you're biking every day, have you ever seen bikers' legs? They definitely build muscle, but there's a limit to how much muscle you can build when you're doing exercises like bicycling, running, swimming, the elliptical, basketball, soccer, whatever that your sport may be. You will build some muscle to some degree, but it's not going to be what I call like pretty muscle. Because in order to make pretty muscle, you need different angles. You need different tools. And as in tools, I mean, you need to have cables, you need to have machines, you need to have dumbbells and barbells. Okay. So for example, if you want to train your biceps, well, you want to be able to do more than just a barbell curl. You want to be able to do some dumbbell curls, some cable curls. You might want to do some rope curls. You might want to even do some work with your when your back workouts. You doing your rows, your cable pull downs, all that stuff will work your biceps indirectly. So it's all about sculpting the muscles. You can't sculpt your muscles by bicycling every day, right? You can grow big legs, but they won't be really defined legs. You're not really going to bring out that definition. So that's where the weightlifting comes into play. So to answer that question, I would say, yeah, you can definitely build muscle playing sports, but there's a limit. Okay, there's a limit to how much muscle you can build because you're not putting an extreme amount of resistance on those muscle bellies. So if you're someone who is an avid biker and you bike 30 miles a day, you do that for a year or two, you're going to have great legs for sure. You're going to have muscular legs, absolutely. But you're not going to have really defined legs. You're going to have just muscular legs, which is fine. But if you're looking for the aesthetics component, the weights have to come into play. Okay. Because think of the weights like an artist who's painting a picture. An artist has their paints, an artist has their paintbrushes, their canvas. You need all those tools to be able to paint a picture, right? Or paint a piece of art. Same thing. If you're going to build a physique that looks like a piece of art with delts that pop out, pecs that are big, biceps that are defined, quadriceps, glutes, hamstrings, everything looks nice and tight. You want to get that V taper in your back. That requires weights. That requires angles. Okay. And I always talk about bodybuilding just being one big game of geometry, and it really is. It's just about maximizing your angles in order to stimulate every single muscle group to the fullest. So, yeah, you can build muscle, but to what degree? I would say there's a limit on it. Okay. So, if you want to build that pretty muscle, my recommendation to you, you need to do weights. Okay. There's no way around it. All right. Next question. Nick, is it true that if I do too much cardio, I will lose muscle mass? You know, I've always talked about this with people, and I say, look, if you like doing cardio, as long as you ensure that you're getting enough calories in and the right macronutrients in, you're not going to go into what we call an catabolic state. Not an anabolic state, a catabolic state. You actually want to be in an anabolic state. You don't want to be in a catabolic state. Now, how do you get to a catabolic state? Well, one way to do it would be to be burning too many calories and not taking enough calories in. So you're constantly in a caloric deficit. Problem is, if you're constantly in a caloric deficit, it's going to be very hard to build muscle and you actually risk losing muscle. Okay. So you have to find that sweet spot. And that's why I tell clients, I'm like, you really have to look at not just your macronutrients and your calories, but more importantly, the micronutrients, the quality of the foods that you're consuming. So if you're someone who likes to do an hour of cardio a day, I wouldn't tell you to stop doing that if you want to put on muscle. I'd say continue doing cardio. It's great for your heart. It's great for your mental state, right? It's great for your overall heart health. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you're supplementing properly with the right nutrients. So you have to really make sure your diet's dialed in. Um, I work with a lot of clients that like to go to spin classes and they do that 3 or 4 times a week. They're burning tons of calories. And I say to them afterwards, you have to ensure that you're getting your protein in, you have to ensure that you're getting your complex carbohydrates in, and you have to make sure that you're getting your healthy fats in. If your diet is dialed in, you're not going to lose muscle. You can do cardio. Okay, so for all those people out there that say, oh, if you do so much cardio, your legs are going to shrink, not true. If you're doing all that cardio and you're not following a clean diet and you're not really getting enough micronutrients, macronutrients into your plan, you will lose muscle. You will go into a catabolic state. But as long as you're feeding the muscles properly, no way. Okay. So I say do your cardio, just make sure that your diet's dialed in. And if you're not sure if you're getting the right micronutrients and enough macronutrients into your plan, my recommendation then would be to work with a coach. Because again, a good coach, someone who is reputable and knowledgeable, can guide you and say, okay, well, based on what you're doing right now, your activity level, you're doing cardio 4 or 5 times a week, you're in the gym 3 or 4 times a week, you're burning a lot of calories. We need to increase your calories, but we need to ensure that the calories you're consuming are clean calories. We need to make sure that the macronutrients you're consuming are going to actually add fuel to your workouts and they're going to benefit you, right? They're not going to take away from you. So that's whenever I work with someone on their plan, one of my first questions is, let me see your workout routine. Let me see what you're doing. Show me your cardiovascular routine. Show me your weightlifting routine. Show me your supplement protocol. I need to see all these things to see what you're doing so I can put together the perfect nutritional plan that will work specifically for you, your goals, and your lifestyle. All right. Okay. Nick, do any supplements actually work? Or are they all just a waste of money? This is in my personal opinion, most supplements don't do anything. Okay. I think a lot of them are just more the placebo effect. I have a lot of people that I work with that when they start lifting weights or they start getting ready for a show, the first question they want to say, well, what's the best supplements to use? What's the best fat burner to use? What's the best weight gainer to use? What's the best protein powder to use? Now, bear in mind, we're talking about legal supplements here, not the anabolic steroids. So we're talking about supplements. I assume when you say supplements, you mean the legal supplements, not the anabolic steroids, because those are very different supplements. But as far as the legal supplements, in my opinion, most of them don't do anything. Okay. Now, it's also important to remember that when I say supplements, I'm not referring to vitamins. I'm not referring to minerals. I'm not referring to powders like collagen powders, bone broth. Those are all things that I actually use, but I use those more for the health benefits. Okay. I'm talking about the pre-workouts. I'm talking about the mass gainers. I'm talking about the fat burners. To me, that stuff is a waste of money. And it goes back again to your diet. If your diet is dialed in, you don't need to have all those supplements. Okay. Put your money towards your food bill, not your supplement bill. If you get a good whey isolate protein powder, that's enough. Okay. If you get a good, if you want an additional BCA powder, branched chain amino acid powder, I say get it, but it's not necessary. Okay. If you feel that you need that pre-workout powder for that extra kick, which I sometimes use myself, do it. But in my opinion, a cup of coffee will suffice. So it's not necessary. Okay. Um, Too many times I see people wasting their money on supplements and not putting their money where it should be, which is on your dietary nutrition. Again, I can't stress this enough. If your diet is dialed in to a T, you're going to excel in the gym. You're going to excel with your results. Okay. So again, we go back to all the supplements over the years that I've taken and I've wasted money on when I was a teenager in my early 20s. And I tell you this because I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I made and waste a bunch of money on stuff that just doesn't work. Okay. So get your diet dialed in. In my opinion, the only supplement you really need is a good protein powder. Okay. Now that could be a good whey isolate, could be a vegan powder, whatever you like. But as long as it's a high quality protein powder, that should be enough. And like I said, if you want, you can get a BCA powder to get your branched chain amino acids in. I like to consume that just for more of the flavor. I feel like my diet is pretty good. So I feel like I get enough nutrients from my diet, along with the vitamins and minerals that I take on a daily basis that I take based, and I've talked about this in the past. The reason I take my supplement protocol, which I call my supplement protocol, which is vitamins and minerals, is based on blood work that I have done twice a year. Okay. So I can see what I'm deficient in. See if I have a zinc deficiency or an iron deficiency, a vitamin D deficiency. And then if I have those deficiencies, then I make sure that I supplement accordingly with those vitamins and minerals. Okay. But if I don't have those deficiencies, I don't take them. Okay. So the only way to truly know what you're deficient in is go get your blood work done. All right. Okay, Nick, what happens to your body if you stop lifting weights for just 1 month? I have a surgery coming up and have been advised to not lift weights for at least 4 to 6 weeks. Not much happens. I mean, listen, I remember when I had my appendix taken out back in 2020, I wasn't able to train for a few weeks and I lost strength, but I didn't lose size. I was able to maintain my size. And the most important thing to remember is if you can't train to the same degree that you were training, like if in your case, you were training 4 or 5 times a week, and now you go from that to no training at all, my recommendation to you again would be to make sure that your diet is really dialed in. So what I would do is, yeah, I didn't need as many calories because I wasn't exerting as much energy, but I still made sure that I had enough protein, if not more protein in my diet to ensure that I did not lose muscle. So during those, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks, I wasn't able to lift weights. I increased my protein. And the reason I increased my protein was so that I would not lose muscle. I didn't increase my carbs. I actually think I decreased my carbs slightly, decreased my fats, because again, I didn't need those additional calories for carbs and fats for fuel for my workouts, but I did need those calories from my protein, I should say, in order to maintain the muscle mass that I've built over the years. So whenever someone has to take a prolonged period of time off from the gym, I've had that happen with clients who've also gone in for surgeries. What I usually recommend to them is to increase their protein, decrease their carbs and their fats. Okay. And that way you'll ensure that any muscle mass you do lose, it'll be very little to none. What you might notice though, when you come back is a decrease in strength. And I always tell clients, I'm like, look, you haven't lost muscle. And if you have lost muscle, we're talking maybe 1 or 2 pounds of muscle that you'll easily put back on again. What you have lost though is that glycogen factor, and glycogen is like oxygen for your muscles, but it gives you that rebound in the gym. So if you're someone who lifts weights regularly, you know what I'm talking about. You have that strength to push out those extra 2 or 3 reps. If you're someone who's completely new to the gym, then you'll also know what I'm talking about because you'll notice that you burn out very quickly. And the reason for that is your body's ability to get rid of lactic acid is not as efficient as someone who's been training for years on end. Okay, so it takes time to build that up for your body to be able to release synovial fluid into your body, right? That's a good thing. But if you're someone who doesn't train with weights on a regular basis, your body's ability to do that is not going to be as efficient as someone who does train with weights on a regular basis. So again, it comes down to just ensuring that you're getting the best out of your workouts and ensuring that you're making the most progress with your physique when you can't train. Okay. And in order to do that, you really have to make sure that your protein levels are high, complex carbs and healthy fats are a little bit on the lower side, just until you can get back in the gym because you don't want to be consuming a bunch of carbs and fats if you're not able to exert that energy and burn off those calories because what's that going to do? It's going to lead to weight gain. Okay. So train smart. And then when you can't train, eat even smarter. Okay. It's so important because if you just take time off from the gym, take time off from your diet, it's going to be very difficult for you to get back into the swing of things. Okay. So if you can't train, you can still control your diet. My recommendation to you, keep those protein levels high so you don't lose much muscle, if any. Okay. Nick, are there any exercises that you recommend avoiding in the gym? I have sciatica and I'm worried about making it worse. Any advice would be appreciated. I'll get flagged on this, but I'd recommend avoiding deadlifts. I personally feel that deadlifts offer little to no benefit. And I know when I say this, people are going to comment about how do you say that deadlifts are one of the best exercises or functional exercises, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But if you have sciatica, you should not be doing deadlifts. Okay. Period. Um, you can do straight leg deadlifts. That's a little bit different, right? That's for your hamstrings, but I'm not a big fan of conventional deadlifts. And I've talked about that many times in the past on the channel. I feel that deadlifts put way too much strain on the lumbar region, especially that L4, L5 region. I've seen numerous people over the years suffer from chronic injuries due to deadlifts. So at the end of the day, if you're not training to be a power lifter, in my opinion, deadlifts, I would take them out. Okay. As far as any other exercises, any that I can think of, behind the neck pull downs, that's another one I see people doing. Again, I find that puts way too much stress on the rotator cuff. So that's another exercise that I would avoid doing. Believe it or not, I'm actually not a big fan of chin-ups. I feel that most people, not all people, but most people are not designed to do chin-ups. And the reason I say that is because when I've watched people do them in the gym, they're using usually atrocious form. They're swinging, they're using every single muscle group except for their lats. And again, you're going to get people who do CrossFit day in, day out, and they can do nice, clean chin-ups, no problem. But I always look at the person's body structure and think, okay, for me, for example, I'm not a tall, skinny guy. I'm a fairly muscular guy, right? I'm 5'10". I'm not that tall. So for me, doing a chin up, I have to use my biceps. I have to use my traps. Maybe I'll use a little bit of lats, but I'm not engaging the lats properly. I'll get way more out of doing a lat pull down than I ever will from doing chin ups. So chin ups are another exercise that I don't recommend people do. And again, it's another exercise where people love them and say, how can you say that? They're one of the best exercises. And look, this is my personal opinion. You're asking me which exercises I would avoid. Those would be two of them. Deadlifts and chin-ups. I feel that they offer little to no benefit, and I feel that you can actually get the same results from doing exercises that are much more safe. Another exercise that I recommend avoiding are front barbell squats. Again, people will say that's one of the biggest, best exercises to build your legs. I won numerous bodybuilding shows without ever doing a front barbell squat. I watch so many people doing front barbell squats, holding the bar on their shoulders forward, and their squats, they're leaning forward. They can't balance correctly. So unless you yourself have an incredibly strong core and you're able to balance and stabilize yourself properly, I would avoid barbell front squats. Okay. So if I were to pick three exercises that or even four, because I said behind the neck pull downs. Those are four that I would avoid. There's a few other ones out there, but those four to me, most people do them incorrectly. And even if you have a trainer that can teach you how to do them correctly, I still feel because I see it all the time, even at my gym, I see people doing these exercises and I cringe because I can see they're rounding their back, their knees are cracking. I can hear their knees cracking. They're swinging on chin ups, they're bobbing their head on behind the neck pull downs. So I'm just like, you're asking for an injury. So I've always gone with I want to avoid injury at any cost. So those four exercises are four that I always keep out of my plans. I rarely, if ever, give them to clients unless they truly want to do those exercises. But I think in the last 20 years, I maybe have given one of those exercises once or twice to someone who just wanted to learn how to do them. But they're exercises that I would avoid, especially if you want to avoid injury and you want to be able to train long term. All right. Okay. Nick, how much protein does a person need to continuously add on muscle? Generic rules will tell you 1.5 to 2 grams per pound of body weight. Okay. So what they usually recommend you do is you take that your body weight, and you times it by 1.5 or you times it by 2, and that will give you your grams. Typically, what I do is I start everyone off with a base level. So if someone's training with me in the gym, let's say 3 times a week, I might say on the days that you train with me, I want you going, if they weigh 150 pounds, I might say, okay, I want you doing right now, 250 grams of protein just to start. And then I just watch how their body changes from there. So I always start people off with a base level. If it's someone who's completely new to the gym, my first inclination with them, the first thing I want to do is see how they follow a training program without even touching their diet. And once they're able to stay consistent with their training program for a good 3 or 4 weeks, Then and only then do I start making dietary nutrition recommendations. Because for a lot of people, just getting into the gym and just starting off on an exercise routine, that can be very overwhelming. So if you're trying to change both your diet and the training program at the same time, that might be too much for someone. So I say, let's start you off, get you into the gym. You're in the gym once or twice a week with me, maybe once or twice a week on your own. You build up just that routine, you build up that habit. And then let's start looking at your diet. And usually, if it's someone who is still fairly new to the gym, getting in even even times in your body weight times 1.5 might be too much for somebody, right? So if they're, let's say, 150 pounds, I might start them at 150 grams of protein. And for a lot of people, that's a struggle to get in. A lot of people underestimate how difficult it is to get in protein. I'm talking about clean protein sources here, okay? I'm not talking about fatty protein sources. I'm talking about clean protein sources. So it is very difficult. So you have to be strategic when you're working with someone who is brand new to the gym. Um, to go back to your question, though, how much protein should you be consuming in one sitting? My recommendation again will be anywhere from 15 to 20 grams of protein for a woman and anywhere from 25 to 30 grams for a man. Okay. And ideally, you want to get anywhere from 4 to 6 meals in a day. Notice I don't say snacks, I say meals. So small meals work best. Okay. Now, if you follow a plan like that, that's going to allow you to build muscle and then you can monitor yourself as you continue. Am I not putting on as much muscle as I want? Okay, I'll increase my protein. But am I putting on too much fat? Maybe I should back off a little bit. Because too much protein is not a good thing either, right? You have to be careful because too much protein can also be very hard on your kidneys. So it's that fine line. And that's why, again, I recommend people constantly do progress photos week in, week out, just for themselves, just to see how they're looking, monitor the scale, just make sure weigh yourself once a week, see what's going on with the scale, same time every week. If you weigh yourself Friday mornings, keep it on Friday mornings every week so you can just watch how your body is changing both on pictures so you can see aesthetically how your body is changing or not changing and on a scale just so you have an idea of if you're going up in weight or down in weight, okay? And then you can make those revisions to your plan as needed. That's what I do with clients. That's how I make changes. I look at the pictures they send me. I go by the number on the scale. I also go by how they feel. Okay, and there's a few other factors I take into consideration, but those are the three main factors that I look at: how someone looks, how someone feels, what the weight is saying that week. And then I make my revisions to their nutritional plan based on those numbers. So I can't give you an exact number because again, everyone's different. But if you are new to the gym, my recommendation, try to start off with just 1 gram per pound of body weight. So that's 150 grams. If you're someone who's been training for 5, 6 years and you're like, no, my diet's dialed in, my recommendation to you would be to take your body weight and times it by two. So if you're 150 pounds, that would be 300 grams of protein. Okay. If you're that kind of person in the middle who trains 3 or 4 times a week and you don't follow your diet to a T and you're that 150-pound person, my recommendation to you would be anywhere from that 220 to 250 gram range. Okay. But again, it's very hard to give a one size fits all answer to this question because there are different factors you have to take into consideration. But for a baseline, those are the numbers I'd recommend to follow. All right. Uh, Nick, how do you know if your body is in the right condition to start cutting or bulking? Okay, well, a good idea is to look at your body and be very critical of your physique. So you have to really take a strong look at your body and say, okay, am I feeling like I need to lose fat? In this case, don't bulk. You want to cut. Don't use the word cut or bulk either. Like you say to yourself, do I need to lose weight? Well, if I do, then I need to probably increase my cardio. I need to go into somewhat of a caloric deficit. I need to be burning more calories than I'm taking in. If I feel like I need to build muscle, I don't need to go into an extreme caloric surplus, but at the same time, I should watch how much cardio I'm doing because the more calories I burn, it's going to be harder for me to put on muscle. This goes back to that first question I talked about with the cardio question. So it's not that cardio is bad, but if your goal is to try to put on weight, you want to make sure you're not doing too much of it. Okay. So you have to really find, again, that happy medium. But you have to be critical of your body. And if you're unable to do that, if you're someone who really struggles to be critical of your physique and say, okay, I feel like I need to lose weight or I feel I need to build muscle, have someone with a good set of trained eyes that can give you their honest opinion. Again, a coach works perfectly here because the coach would not bullshit you. The coach will say to you, look, yeah, you could be a little bit bigger. Or the coach will say to you, yeah, you could be a little bit leaner. Okay. And this is the direction I think we should go in. And then it becomes so much easier for you as the athlete or the client just to follow the program that's laid out for you. And you don't have to second guess yourself because you're working with someone that you trust, someone that has a second set of eyes on you that can kind of think outside the box and not just look at your body the way you look at your body. Because don't forget, you see your body every day. And that can be very, very difficult to understand as to when and where to make changes because you start playing mind games with yourself. So if you're working with someone who has an experienced eye and can give you an honest answer, not just give you a bullshit answer and say, yeah, you look great when they know and you know that you need to lose like 30 pounds, that's going to help you take your physique to the next level. Okay. And that's why it's so important to work with someone who won't give you that bullshit. Oh, you're looking great. Keep going when you're not looking great. And you don't keep going at what you're doing. It's time to change something because whatever you're doing is not working. Okay. So it's again, it's if you have that trained eye and you can be really critical of your physique, then and only then would I make the decision to cut or bulk. But what I've always done is I've always been able to assess my physique and really be very harsh of myself and say, look, am I getting a little soft in my midsection? I am. I need to increase my cardio. I need to back off my carbs for a few weeks. At the same time, there's been times where I feel like, I'm really lean right now. I want to add on 3 or 4 pounds of muscle. So I'll go into somewhat of a caloric surplus just for a few weeks, not forever, just for a few weeks. And again, I'll monitor it to make sure any weight that I'm putting on is not body fat. As soon as the weight that I'm putting on starts to jiggle, then I know I'm doing something wrong with my diet and I start to back off. Okay. But you have to have that trained eye. You have to be able to know what's fat versus what's water, what's muscle. And once you can actually really be critical of your physique and give your physique a full assessment, an honest assessment, then you'll decide, okay, I'm ready to drop 10 pounds or I'm ready to gain 10 pounds. And if you're second guessing yourself, hire a coach. It's really that simple. It's really that straightforward. All right. Nick, what's the best approach for maintaining muscle mass while aging? Keep doing what you've been doing your entire life, granted that you've been training. Okay. So my training hasn't changed from the time I was in my 20s to 30s, now going into my 40s. It stayed the exact same. My diet's changed a little bit because now that I no longer compete, I don't need to consume 10 meals a day. I consume 6 to 7 meals a day max, sometimes even 5 meals. But if I wanted to start competing again, I know I would have to start eating more again. Okay. But if your goal is to be able to just maintain a level of performance in the gym and maintain a physique that you enjoy, that you feel confident in, then my recommendation is to keep doing what you've been doing throughout your entire life. Okay. Don't take your foot off the gas. Don't fall victim to that mindset of, well, I'm getting old, so I need to slow down. I should lift lighter. I should be more careful. If you start thinking like a fragile old man or old woman, that's what you're going to turn into. Okay. You need to believe that, hey, there's no reason why me at 39 can't train the same way I did at 19. If anything, I feel like I can train more intensely now than I did then. I can also train more intelligently now than I can then because I've had all this experience in the gym. And I know how to warm up my body properly. I know when to back off my body. I know when to rest it. I know when to push it. I know when I need to take a few days off the gym. I know when I don't need any days off from the gym. And that comes with experience. So again, if you're someone who's been lifting for the last 2 or 3 decades, keep doing what you're doing. Don't fall victim to that mindset of I'm old and frail because you'll become old and frail. You yourself will become old and frail. If you have a weak mindset, you're going to turn into a weak person. So, and the reason I say this is because I've talked about this in the past, how I have clients in their 60s and 70s who are out training people in their 20s. And it's because they've been training their whole lives. So even if you are someone who's new to the gym, you started training weights in your 50s, that doesn't mean that you have to have that weak mindset either. You can say, you know what? My goal now is to be stronger and more fit in my 50s, going into my 60s, going into my 70s than I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s. That could be your goal. You know what I mean? So I feel that a lot of people put limitations on themselves as they get older. And I think the reason for that is because they've seen people who are older than them and see how they're frail and they're fragile. But you have to remember, this younger generation, and I'm talking about my generation, I'm talking about the maybe even the baby boomers to some degree, the younger baby boomers, their parents weren't training at all. A lot of people were not going, like, if you look at the gyms back in the 60s and the 70s, 50s, they were empty. There wasn't as many people working out then as there is today. So when you look at those people who are now in their 80s and 90s, a lot of them are weak and frail because they didn't really take care of their health. They didn't really watch what they ate. But I think what we're going to see with these younger generations, the millennials, Generation X, some baby boomers to a degree, is that people are living longer and people are also looking younger and people are feeling better and people are more healthy because they're incorporating exercise into their daily routine. They're incorporating a clean diet into their daily routine. Okay. So I think if you truly want to continue to build muscle or maintain a level of performance in the gym and maintain a physique that you feel confident in and that allows you to move and allows you to feel energized and not feel tired, not feel sore, you have to keep doing what you're doing. You have to keep pushing yourself. You cannot allow yourself to become a slave to your genetics or a slave to your age. Okay? Because if you do that, don't even bother. Just give up. You have to have a strong mindset, period. If you have the weak mindset, you're not going to last. Strong mindset is what is going to allow you to continue to progress as you age, period. All right. Last question. Nick, what's your opinion on the intuitive eating approach for bodybuilders trying to stay lean and grow muscle? I've never been a fan of intuitive eating. And maybe it's the OCD in me, but even to this day, I still use a food scale. For 90% of the food that goes into my body, I use a food scale. Okay. And the other 10%, what I typically do with that, if it's like, if I'm it's at the end of the day and maybe I'm still a little bit hungry, I might just do like a little bit of oats, some peanut butter. But that's just based on if I'm maybe more hungry that day. Maybe I'm not as hungry that day and I take out one meal, but most of the food that comes into my body is measured out accordingly. Why? Well, for me, again, it could be my OCD, but I also know that if I'm eating, let's say, half a cup of oats and one scoop of protein powder, two scoops of collagen right before my workout, I know I'm going to have a good workout. I already know that. I know that if I were go to a restaurant and have eggs benny and hash browns before a workout, I also know I would not have a good workout because that food's going to make me feel very lethargic, very tired. Okay, because I've done it both ways. And so knowing that, okay, this meal works best for me pre-workout, knowing that chicken and brown rice works really well for me when I'm halfway through my day on the work floor because it's very easy to digest. So I still feel energized. I'm not having a big meal that's going to make me feel lethargic when I'm training clients. I'm going to still feel lots of energy without having to rely on stimulants like caffeine, okay, or ephedrine, and none of that stuff. I want to use food to fuel me, not just through my workouts, but through my day. So in order for me to do that, I know the amount of the portion sizes I need. So there's no guessing here. There's no variables. I know exactly how my day is going to go. But that's me though. Okay. I'm very robotic with my food. I'm very robotic with my nutrition, but I do that so I'm able to perform at optimal levels in my business and in my workouts. Okay, so that's why I'm huge advocate of making sure that your diet is dialed in accordingly so that you can perform at optimal levels throughout the day without having to rely on stimulants. Why I also don't like intuitive eating, especially for people who are trying to lose weight or build muscle, is it's a guessing game constantly. If for some reason you're adding on 2 pounds of muscle every 3 or 4 months, which I think is pretty good, but you don't have a blueprint to what you're doing. Well, how are you going to duplicate that 5 or 6 years from now when you're trying to say put on more muscle again, 2 or 3 pounds of muscle? And like, well, what did I do 5 or 6 years ago? You won't know. Same thing if you're losing weight. You're like, well, okay, you don't have a blueprint to follow. So if you're losing weight and you're doing intuitive eating, and all of a sudden you hit a plateau, you don't really know where to make those changes. Should I be taking down my carbs? Should I be decreasing my fats? Should I be rotating my proteins? You don't know. So that's why I don't like intuitive eating because when you hit a plateau with your health, with your physique, with your weight loss, with your weight gain, you don't know where to make changes. So the nice thing with practicing proper portion control is that you know exactly where to make changes. And this is why I stress the importance of using a food scale. It's not, I don't think it's OCD. I've been told it's OCD, but personally, I don't think it's OCD because for me, I'm not trying to lose weight or gain weight. I just want to, like I said, I want to be able to perform at optimal levels throughout the day, 24 hours a day. Okay. Like a machine. So in order for me to do that, I have to develop a machine type mindset and have a very systematic approach I take with my diet. I'm not saying that you have to take that same approach, but at least if you're getting the bulk of your meals portioned out, so you know exactly how much macronutrients you're having in each meal, how much carbs, how much protein, how much fats, when to plug in the fats, when to take out the fats, when to put in the carbs, when to take out the fats or the carbs, sorry, you're going to be able to know exactly where to make those tweaks and revisions when you do want to add on 2 more pounds of muscle, or when you do want to take off 5 pounds of fat, or when you just want to, like me, be able to perform at optimal levels throughout the day and not feel tired or irritable and need caffeine or need sugar or rely on all this crap because your diet's dialed in and you're practicing proper portion control. So again, I've never been a fan of intuitive eating. I know there's a lot of people out there that say that, using a food scale or practicing proper portion control can lead to eating disorders. And I won't argue with that. For some people, it might. But for the people that I work with and for the general population that work with me as their coach when I do their nutritional plans, it works really well for them. And I have some clients who I don't work with year round. They work with me for a few months and I don't see them for a few months. And then they come back and work with me again. They still, when I talk to them, they're still practicing portion control. They'll send me their new plan that they're doing. Maybe they made a few changes along the way, but they're still practicing portion control because they've been able to build those good habits. So if you truly want to continue to progress with your physique, with your health, my recommendation is that you monitor what you're doing with your diet by making sure that you're portioning out your foods evenly throughout the day and weighing out your meats, measuring out your carbs, whatever it is, so that you know exactly how much complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, and lean proteins you're getting in for the bulk of your day. Okay. And like me, if you want to leave 10% of that day to just kind of eyeball it, do it. But as long as that 90% is measured, I truly believe that you're going to be able to perform throughout the day at optimal levels and you're going to be able to progress with your physique, both with muscle mass and fat loss. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, February the 24th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house coaching business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and feedback that I receive from each and every one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.